we're gonna talk about how I take my notes. I've been wanting to do this video, but it's such a huge topic for me to tackle because there's so many different ways I do things. So it's gonna be a series of note-taking videos. Today is just about the math notes. This entire video and series is just gonna be about how I make my notes aesthetic and pretty. And I know that there's gonna be people who are like, that's so stupid, why would you do that? It's literally a waste of time, why are you doing that? I get that point. And I also want to say, I'm not all my notes are beautiful. It's not always perfect all the time, and it doesn't have to be perfect for anyone. This might not be efficient for everyone, but it helps me. That's why I do this. It might be stupid to some people, and that's okay. I agree with you on a certain level, but it's what works for me. It makes me happy. So I would really love it if we could not comment stuff like, oh, that's so stupid, stop making your notes aesthetic, it's stupid. Okay, so this is quite unusual, but most of this video is going to be a voiceover. So before we start, I want to show you guys how all my notes looked like in the past. I have had different ways of taking notes. I've had different systems, but honestly, I think the biggest difference was just that I had these different titles. I was really into lettering, and I would always make these titles different colors and fonts and variations. That was the main part, and I know it was kind of unnecessary. This specific era, I had the most outrageously intricate titles, and I would do calligraphies for everything. It looks really pretty, and it was actually really organized as well because I was doing these notes on the sides, and I color-coded all the chapters. It was all really well done, but it did take a lot of time. I had more time back then, but now that wouldn't work. But still, a lot of the organization methods I used for my notes back then, I still use now. For example, the way I would write down exercises or the way I would write notes on the sides. It's something that I really like doing. I love writing notes in the margins, and it's a common reoccurring theme throughout my notes. These are the most recent ones, and they look quite similar to the style that I'm going for today. As you can see, it looks a lot more minimalistic and toned down in comparison to the other years. I actually added this little post-it note so I can have an overview of all the chapters that I covered in this pile. I actually only stuck to pink that year. I didn't even use a color coding system. Everything was just in light pink. I don't really know how that happened. I got lazy, so I just stuck to pink, and I would have preferred a color coding system. It really helps me organize my thoughts when there's colors assigned to each chapter or topic. That is something I should change. I'm gonna do homework now. Before I even start the actual note-taking for math, here I am writing down my syllabus. And I copied this directly from the IB math book. The contents page in our textbook would have all the material, and I decided to write everything by hand. Halfway through I realized that was a really dumb idea because I could have printed that out and it would have made more sense. But anyways, the reason I was doing this is because first of all, I wanted to get a better overview of what the topics were that I was gonna learn. I usually just learn the subtopics individually, and it was harder for me to organize it into a bigger picture idea. So this is why I wanted to have this overview. Second of all, it also helps me with color coding. My hands hurt. I had all the chapters laid out, and I could assign different colors to each of the big topics, and there were 6 in total. As for the supplies I use for note-taking in math specifically, we're gonna go through the pens and everything. So these are my main ones. I use a whiteout as always. This is my general writing pen and my pencil, brush pen, my mild liner highlighter, and I also use this gel pen. These are the different pencils and the different pens that I would recommend. I will add all the names on the screen. And this is the best brush pen. These are the whiteouts I use, and these are the refills that I use for my pens at whiteout. I use this specific set. I use the pastel one. There's 5 colors in there. I use an extra green one. These are the corresponding gel pen colors for the margin notes. Now let's get to the actual note-taking. Sort of changed around my system from the previous year, but it is quite similar. So here's me taking out my pens. I make sure that all the supplies I need for note-taking would fit into my pencil case. Back in the days, I would use a lot of fancy ass brush pens and like art supplies for my notes, and it was just like inconvenient because I couldn't even take those to school. Also, here's me referring back to the DIY syllabus that I just made so I can get the color code right. Anyways, here's me just speed running my notes. A brief overview of how it looks like when I take my notes. I mainly use highlighters and gel pens to like emphasize things. I use gel pens to write notes on the sides. I'll explain later why. And I also use them to underline words and important formulas. And the highlighters I would then use to make the subtitles. Now, as for the actual note taking, first of all, I would always add the actual chapter name that you can find within the textbook. So I would do that with the corresponding highlighter color. And this is me doing the title. I still wanted to have calligraphy in there, but I didn't want it to be super fancy. I would just write the chapter number in the calligraphy. So this was chapter 9. And the rest I would write in pen. As for the subtopics, I would also just do it with the highlighter and then the pen. And as you can see, like I use highlighter first before I write with the gel pen on top. Whenever I use the gel pen and then highlight over it, it always smudges. Like there's literally no pen that doesn't smudge. So I just decided to adapt my highlighting methods, and this works pretty well. I really recommend doing this. This is the writing portion. It's just me writing down the notes. The reason I was doing these notes at home was because my notes from last year were kind of disorganized, so I did them again for this year, and also just to revise because I wasn't really good at this topic anymore. Regarding my handwriting, because I've heard a lot of people say that they like my handwriting, generally growing up, I've always been complimented for my handwriting. I tried really hard to make it nice. I'm like sort of a perfectionist. So one of the main things that helped me was instead of writing letters in a fluid one motion, like for example M or N or A, instead of doing those letters in a fluid motion, I would like do each stroke individually. And I know it sounds like that would take longer, but it actually doesn't. Once you get into the habit of doing that, it gets faster and it looks a lot more neat when you do the single strokes and when you try to make the lines straight. As you can see, I'm always writing these notes in the margins. These margin notes later help me with revision. They're just little summaries of what the main note-taking is about. If I do an exercise, the margin notes would then describe what is this exercise about, what am I trying to figure out here. It really helps me get an idea of what I'm actually trying to do. Sometimes I just do exercise and I don't even understand what I'm doing it for and like what the general idea is. So I would always write the general idea in the margins to help me actually understand the topic. Later with revision, I can look at these notes so I can have a quick overview of what exactly I did in this chapter. Okay, now I'm gonna explain the part about the pink gel pen, which I always use a color gel pen corresponding to the color theme to emphasize points. Whenever I need to write exercises down or examples, I would write that in gel pen and like put it around a box. If there's an important word, then I would use the gel pen to underline it to emphasize it. Here I am writing more notes into the margin. Another thing I do is when there's an important formula, I would also put it in a box. Okay, now more about my handwriting. I would also just recommend using a good pen. Black gel pens are the best pens and they always make your handwriting look nice. Another thing is I tend to write a lot smaller. I don't know why, but when you write smaller and more compact, I feel like it just looks nicer. In the end, the style I'm going for with my handwriting, not like fancy cursive. I try to write as much like a printer would. People sometimes look at my notes and they're like, oh my god, your handwriting looks like it got printed out by a printer. That's my style. I like that style, but I also get that some people would prefer like cursive, but I'm not that kind of person. I write like this and I try to write like a printer. Now this is very math specific. So this is about drawing graphs. This part is a logarithmic function. I use a pencil to draw my graphs, but I don't usually use a ruler. I know that's like not good, but I feel like freehanding it just makes things easier for me, and when there's actually a test, I would use a ruler, of course. Also, I would then go in again with like my colored gel pen to emphasize points. So those are all the basic points about my math notes, and here's how they look like in the end. Somewhat minimalist, pretty cute, but also very effective. Okay, now this part of the video is about flashcards. This is an extension of my note-taking. This is where I summarize the most important points, the most important formulas. Here are some of the past flashcards I've made. Again, there's like different styles, but I would always try to mirror the style that I have in my notes. In my flashcards, it helps me like connect the flashcards to the corresponding notes that they're about. Again, I have like so many different ones throughout the years. I'm not gonna lie, looking back at them, they look really nice, but they did take a lot of time, so I'm not gonna make them that nice. And these are the ones I'm going for this year. I'm actually gonna use pink flashcards this year, which is a bit different. This is me making the flashcards. I actually decided to do them a little bit differently. Instead of like using the fancy calligraphy with all the different colors that like you saw in the other ones, I literally just used regular ass black gel pen for all of the writing. I didn't do anything too fancy, but I think that was enough. I used to write a lot on there as well, but now I'm literally just adding the most important formula. We do actually get a formula booklet. I still think it's good to memorize them. Thank you guys for watching today's video. I do want to say I can't like post anything next week because I will be like in a country where I can't like go on YouTube. I think you guys all know what I'm talking about. I'm going to Shanghai. I mean, it's like really cute there, so I'm gonna obviously film some stuff when I'm there. Just a heads up, like there's nothing coming next week. I hope that was somewhat helpful. I don't know. Also, oh my god, I almost forgot to mention, thank you so much for 50K. That is literally mind-boggling. I love you guys so much.